the Philippines is a land of like a lot of healers as well. So they're very gifted. Their intention and their prayer is pure, and they're asking a higher power to help and assist. So when I talk about energy healing, people sometimes automatically jump into it's a bunch of crystals and ritual. That's not typically what I mean by that. Well, I wasn't looking to build the program at the beginning. Things came to me and it was how to heal myself. Everything is connected. Your mind, your emotions, your intentions, they all produce energy. The more I let go of wanting to learn and just focus on doing the work, the more I learn.
Welcome to the Melanie Avalon Biohacking Podcast, where we meet the world's top experts to explore the secrets of health, mindset, longevity, and so much more. Are you ready to take charge of your existence and biohack your life? This show is for you. Please keep in mind, we're not dispensing medical advice and are not responsible for any outcomes you may experience from implementing the tactics lying herein. Are you ready? Let's do this. Welcome back to the Melanie Avalon Biohacking Podcast. Oh my goodness, friends, it was such an honor to have Oliver Niño today on the show. His book, Spiritual Activator, is so encouraging and motivating when it comes to getting all of the negative energy and negative vibes out of our life. And yes, we do talk about whether or not this whole concept is woo-woo or other concerns people might have coming from a religious background, like is it demonic or dark spiritually? I really do think that the practices that Oliver talks about can help so many people. We talk about things like chakras, having awareness and intuition, the role of spiritual gifts, how to combat fear, how to protect and shield yourself from negative energy in your life, so many things. And Oliver is so cool. He works with so many incredible people with this, including a lot of celebrities. He's definitely a figure in this world of spiritual work. So let me know what you think in my Facebook group, IF Biohackers, Intermittent Fasting plus Real Foods plus Life. Comment something you learned or something that resonated with you, no pun intended, to enter to win something I love. And then check out my Instagram, find the Friday announcement post, and again, comment there to enter to win something that I love. The show notes will be at melanieavalon.com/spiritual. Those show notes will have a full transcript, so definitely check that out. All right, I think that's all the things. Without further ado, please enjoy this fabulous conversation with Oliver Niño. Hi, friends. Welcome back to the show. I am so incredibly excited about the conversation that I'm about to have. So is about a topic that means a lot to me, that personally resonates with me a ton, but which I historically have sort of a casual relationship with, I guess I would say. And basically, I am all about vibes and people's energy, and it's something that I personally try to embody and I experience and I feel with people, and I think it's a very real thing. All of that said, I haven't really taken a concentrated, studied approach to it, if that makes sense. Like I haven't really dived into it as far as, what actually creates our energetic vibe and how can we change it and what is going on with things like chakras and auras and our dreams and all of that stuff. And so when I saw the new book out by the fantastic Oliver Niño called Spiritual Activator, 5 Steps to Clearing, Unblocking, and Protecting Your Energy to Attract More Love, Joy, and Purpose, I was over the moon thrilled about the possibility of reading the book, talking with Oliver, and just diving deep into it. And friends, reading the book was such an incredible journey. We'll talk about this with Oliver, but I was really, really fascinated by historically when I, read content like this, it's often not so practical per se, but this book actually provides an actual program that you can literally do to do things like address, the energy state that you're in and raise your vibe and all the things. And so I just have so many questions. I've spoken with Oliver briefly because we had some scheduling hiccups, and I'm already just like, I just love this man so much. So Oliver, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
I'm sure a lot of listeners are probably familiar with your work. I mean, you've just done so much and you work with so many people, including a lot of celebrities, and you've really had a profound effect on thousands and thousands of people. But for those who are not familiar with you, you talk about your personal story in the book. Oh, which by the way, before that, you narrated the audiobook, right?
Yes, that was me.
What was that experience like? I always love asking people about that because I know it's like such a like a big journey to go on when you narrate it.
Yeah, not as good as my wife because I was there when she was recording hers, and she's like literally like they blocked up I think 3 or 4 days to record hers, and she got it done in like a day and a half, and I'm like 2.5 days, like taking my time, like I mean, like it's I wanted to make sure that I also brought a lot of emotions and excitement and infused the audio with energy as well. So it was, there was a lot of layers to it, but it was fun. It was fun. It was one of the things where I'm like, okay, this is how people do it. Now I see.
No, same. I'm always because I did a lot of audiobook recordings in the past, and it's like not what people think if they haven't done it before. It's a whole journey. That's so great though that you got to, I love it when the authors narrate their own book because you get to hear it in their own words and their own passion. And like you said, you really get to bring an energy to it. So that's so, so amazing. So in any case, so you talk about your personal story in that book. Could you tell listeners a little bit about your journey and why you're doing what you're doing today?
Yeah, I mean, I like to refer to myself as almost like an accidental healer, right? It's not one of the things that I thought I would be doing, that I dreamed about doing. It was, it came out of nowhere and it came in strong, right? Because my background is in entrepreneurship. That's my first love, right? Building businesses, selling them, growing them, scaling them, and I've done that, very successfully. I remember times where I was stuck, whether it's in my business or stuck in my relationships and nothing else worked. Like, energy healing was the only thing that worked when everything else failed. Right. So for me, I started off like really skeptical, left brain, questioning everything. Right. But I couldn't fight the fact that, like, running in my blood, like, my family members, just like, they're very gifted. Right. And the Philippines is a land of like a lot of healers as well. So, I try to not run away because it didn't really, when I was growing up, it didn't dawn on me that that was the culture in the background. It was like a silent thing, a silent theme, and I was a little bit more of a, rebellious musician. So I didn't really pay attention to it, but I didn't factor in that, like, hey, if you grow up in that environment, if it's in the bloodline, if it's in the culture, then at one point in time, it's going to, come up and activate. Right. So I wasn't thinking about that. But, when I was in Sedona, to kind of like find myself in a spiritual journey, all of a sudden, like, all these like different spiritual gifts awakened in like literally in a weekend, right? And it was one of the things that I was in a sacred site, a vortex point, and all of a sudden I could see energy, I could know things, I could feel things, and I'm like, what's going on, right? I was kind of a little bit shocked because I wasn't expecting any of that stuff. It just came in full force, and ever since then, it's like one of the things that I couldn't shake off, no matter how hard I tried. Like, and it's one of the things to where when it's running through you, all of a sudden, like, you just have this pull, this urge to use it for good, right? So based on that experience, came the next part of my journey of like starting to do healings on people. I've done probably like close to 30,000 plus sessions, and people would just come. Like, because I was a closet healer back then. Like, I wouldn't market it. I didn't want the world to know it. So I would tell friends and family. Next thing you know, they'd have like a great experience. They'd bring their friends, and next thing you know, it's like this long list of folks that want to work with you. And for me, it was just like, okay, let me just do this because for some reason I was just pulled to do it. It's like this driving force, this invisible driving force that was just pushing me daily to do it, to where I'm like, okay, I guess, this is what life is now. Like, just doing healings on the side when you own a international, business, right? So I did that for a while until my wife, Mandy, was pregnant with our first son, Zion. And that was when I had to take a hard look at the mirror and be like, do I want to spend the rest of my life hiding, right? Do I want my child to be born and see that, his father is afraid to be seen and to really, own his truth, right? So that was when I was, faced with this really, really, like, tough situation of like, shine my light fully or hide and continue to do things like I have. So obviously, looking back, I chose the latter, which is the best decision of like, I'm just going to shine fully and do this and be seen, right? And kind of like, and launch myself into the world as, spiritual activator, as a healer. And life has never been the same since. Like, all these opportunities that I never thought would come up have come up, and I would have never thought I'd be doing what I'm doing now, or could have even dreamt about the things that have come up since I made that decision. But it was probably, it's probably the best decision I've ever made when it comes to purpose work.
That's incredible. Okay. I have so many questions just from what you just said. So when you had before, when you were, quote, hiding a little bit or afraid to do this more publicly, did the content or the effects of your healings themselves change when you made that switch, since you no longer had that, maybe that residual fear there?
I don't think it changed because every single time I was, well, actually, let me rewind. As far as the one-on-one healings that I did, like they were the same because when I was doing healings back in the day, I never healed others, through the lenses of my human story, right? I was always a vessel for something higher. So I'm always doing the healings from my soul space, my higher self, right? Something flowing through me. So in that case, it never really affected the results for other people, right? As far as the results for me, because the thing is, when I'm doing healings, it doesn't matter if what I'm going through, I do it in such a place to where I'm always stepping into higher lenses. So I'm doing it from a different place. So people are always getting the same quality every single time, right? Now, if I'm hiding and I'm in fear, then does that mean I'm in a vibration to where I might be more tired from the healings, or they're slower, or it affects me more? Sure, right? Because I have something within me that's not in alignment at that time. Therefore, I'm in a lower vibration. Therefore, things would affect me that normally wouldn't if I was living in a higher vibration, right? So there's two separate things. As a healer, was it longer, more drawn out, and I got tired more before I started to be seen? Yes. But as far as the end user experience, has been the same all throughout. But again, also after I stepped into my purpose, all of a sudden, like, newer versions of the gift showed up, to where instead of doing one-on-one healings, like all of a sudden I'm now gifted with more knowledge in how to do healings on groups of people, bigger groups, right? I mean, now, like some of the groups that I do healings on, they're in the thousands that I do it at one sitting, and it still works. And I remember being given more information on different healing modalities that just flowed through me after I made a decision of shining my light and being seen and going all in, because I feel like making that decision catapulted me to a higher vibration. And in that higher vibration, just more sacred knowledge was available to me.
So two, not to start on a negative, but two barriers I would love to address or get your opinion on, because just the overall nature of this content. So there's two, there may be more, but there's two like big, quote, elephant in the rooms I think of when I think of this, as far as people being suspicious or skeptical. Or so one would be people who just say that it's, quote, woo woo and not real and not scientific, which you touched on briefly. And then the second one would be, I personally was raised in like Bible Belt Christian South, very religious, very Christian. And so this type of work, I think when it would come up in my upbringing, was seen not as like woo woo, but as demonic in a way. Like that would probably be what it would be labeled as, which is very interesting. So just to like start with that, those barriers that people might have, and maybe there's more that you'd like to add. What are your thoughts on all that?
Sure. I mean, it is actually more common than you think. I actually in the Philippines is like a strict, like, Catholic nation, to where, like, I mean, my grandfather's brother was a archbishop, right? So we had a lot of priests in the family, like, and it's interesting because I feel like in the Philippines, it's, yes, we have those things, but then there's also the culture of, like, there's a lot of healers in the Philippines as well, right? To where religious beliefs, yeah, it might be like, not so great, like what you mentioned. It might be dark, it might be it might be just not godly. But then in our culture, it was widely accepted to have healers, right? That heal the land, heal people, and Philippines is known for that. So there was always two lenses in which to view things. But yeah, to your point, the way I look at it is yeah, people sometimes think, yeah, it's outside of the realm of my beliefs and all those different things. But here's the thing: is when I look at healing, I see it across different religions, different backgrounds. You can have somebody, literally with a loved one who is terminally ill, and they pray, and then a person is healed, right? Because they are, like, their intention and their prayer is pure. and they're asking a higher power to do that, right? To help and assist. And the thing is, when I'm doing this stuff, it's not me who's doing it. I whenever I'm talking with people, it's like I ask them like, what are your beliefs? Do you believe in God, higher power, universe? What are your beliefs? And let's call your higher power to be part of this healing, right? To facilitate it, to be here, to really just help with it. And for me, the way I look at it is I'm just a vessel. Like I'm a facilitator. I'm a vessel. I am here working with their higher power, and that's how the healing occurs. So I don't look at it as anything outside of what they already believe in, because for me, it's like whatever they believe in, that's the energy that we're working with.
Yeah, that completely makes sense. And I even saw that I was reading through a lot of the reviews of the book, the majority of which are really fantastic. And some of them were actually touching on that. Like I was reading, because I was really interested in the ones written, the reviews from the Christian perspective, just because I was so saturated in it growing up. And I was reading some of the reviews saying basically what you just said, that it was in line with their religious upbringing from a Christian perspective, basically what you just said. So,
And the thing with it as well is when I talk about energy healing, people sometimes automatically jump into, oh, it's a bunch of crystals and a bunch of, this new age and rituals and all those different things. And I'm like, I get that that's a sector of it, but that's not typically what I mean by that. Like I have practices that I teach to where, people want to feel better, then they move their body, they exercise, or they get sunlight, or they take a salt bath, right? Or they set an intention, or there's more than one way of doing it. And a lot of times the things that clear our energy, that release negative energy from our body, are things that we already normally love doing, right? Whether it's playing with animals, right? Being with the elements, being by yourself, creating stuff like writing, playing instruments. I mean, these things, if you look at them, they're what people do on a daily basis, right? And they might not even know or think that it has any positive effects for energy healing and clearing, but it does, right? So a lot of the times people can be doing things that clear their energy without ever knowing that's what they're doing. And that's fine, because again, it's like energy clearing in my mind is just a label. It's just a way to describe like, a certain way of doing things, but people are clearing their energy more often than they know, just by doing the things that they, naturally do every single day.
and to provide some language for people more and clarify and definitions surrounding this concept of the actual energy itself. And this is, I hope I can articulate this question correctly, but could you kind of paint a picture of the low versus the high vibration energy state, what that looks like? And my nuanced question there is, because I think we could see it as binary, like, happy feelings and joyful feelings versus like sad feelings and feeling down and feeling afraid. But then on top of that, sometimes I feel like sometimes you can have these, I don't know if they're like lower, so like non-happy feelings, but not be personally distressed by it and almost enjoy it. So what I mean by that is, like, growing up, I was really attracted to like bittersweet things, and I would have like my sad quote book, and I would love to like, write sad quotes, and then I'll listen to like sad songs. So that state of like enjoying sadness, like, is that like, where does that fall on the energy spectrum? So kind of a long question.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I look at it as I'm not so much. There's a lot of things that in life that I'm black and white with, right? But that's not one of the things that I'm black and white with, because the way I look at it is, let's say somebody experiencing sadness or grief or fear, right? Right. If they live in that and that's what they're experiencing 100% or 80% of the time, and it's disempowering, it's debilitating, it's not allowing them to live life to the fullest, sure, it's an issue, right? But if you are 80% of the time, in neutral or high vibrations, and then sometimes sadness and fear comes in, right? Then it's just part of the human experience. I mean, you want to understand why they're coming up. You want to understand what it's teaching you. You want to understand, because it can be a teacher, it can be a lesson, it can be feedback. You're sad because of what, right? You're sad because somebody passed away. You're sad because of a heartbreak. You're sad because, you feel unloved or abandoned. Those are all good things to be sad about. It doesn't mean that you're experiencing that. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden you're a crappy human being. You're a human being. You're experiencing that. You're experiencing it fully. You're learning from it, right? And then you're moving on. Because the thing is, when you experience things fully, you process it. And when you process it, it no longer gets shoved under the rug. It no longer holds you back. It no longer is the invisible thing that controls you unconsciously because it's an unprocessed thing. Right? It becomes the thing that you fully process, you allow yourself to feel, that you love yourself through it, and you gave your space time and space to feel it, to where now it doesn't hold you back anymore, and you move forward and you learn from it. Right? Because some things can be like if somebody passes on, like for example, a loved one passes on, like yeah, you can be angry, you can be sad, you can feel all those different things. You can suppress that for 20, 30, 40 years and it affect you mentally, emotionally, physically, and shove it under the rug and never deal with it. Or you can feel it fully for a week or two or however long it takes, and then heal and allow the process to heal, and then you're done. It doesn't weigh on you anymore, right? So I feel like it's not always like quote unquote bad just because you're feeling things that are low vibrational. It's important to put into context.
That completely makes sense. So when I started reading your book, I was fascinated because you have this, like I mentioned earlier, a very practical, implementable program that people can literally do, like with a timeline. like you can sit down and you can do this, and you go through clearing the chakras, and then the days of discovering your gifts and your abilities and your purpose work. So that actual system or program, how did you come up with it?
So the program itself, it's interesting how it actually unfolded because I wasn't looking to build the program at the beginning, right? At the beginning, it was like things came to me and it was how to heal myself, right? And then out of curiosity, I'm like, okay, let me go ahead, because I'm the type of person that if I learn something and it's cool and it's helping me, I'm going to be the first to share it with people around me, right? So out of just naturally how I'm wired, next thing you know, I'm sharing it with friends and family members and seeing them get results. And then next thing you know, I'll share it with more people. So it came to me in stages, right? It never all came at once, because the thing is, I would get a piece of information or a methodology and I would use it, right? And I would use it for sometimes for years with nothing else showing up but that. And I would just do that over and over and over again. And I would see, okay, there's some things that I do that work with everybody or a lot of people. And there's some that only work with specific types of people, right? So for me, I would pay attention to things that work universally, right? And then those are the things that I'll put in the books because I wanted to make sure the book spoke to everybody and anybody, right? So for me, it is, by the time it gets to become something in written form like a book, or gets to one of our programs, it's been massively field tested throughout the years from with different people, with different backgrounds, with different walks of life, and I have to make sure that it works on that level, not just me, before I roll it out, right? And then what ends up happening is the more I get into it, the deeper I get into the healings, the more people that I serve, the more I work on myself further, it catapults me to a higher vibration. And in that higher vibration, all of a sudden, more information, more knowledge becomes available to me to use, to try, to work through, right? And that's kind of been the process. Is like, it's something that if I wanted to rush it, I can't rush it, because every time I do, nothing happens. But when I just work on myself, work on a vibration level, and realizing that certain sacred information only, they're vibration based. It doesn't matter how bad you want to learn them. If you're not a vibrational match to the sacred information, it's not going to be applicable to you. It won't work for you. It won't appeal to you. It won't even show up. Right. So for me, that's where the learning came, is the more I let go of wanting to learn and just focus on doing the work, the more I learned, if that makes sense.
And for people, because you were talking about, whether or not this is resonating with people and where people are at, when people actually start this, so the order of things, like you talk about, protecting yourself versus clearing your chakras. What does that practically look like?
So there's two things. So protecting yourself, when someone is protecting yourself, right, the idea behind it is that you're not taking on anything that can affect you or hurt you, right? Because the thing is, if let's say you're sensitive and you go out into the mall, right, if you have protection on, the idea behind it is that you're not going to be affected by it, right? The idea behind it is that you're, instead of absorbing and taking on stuff from other people, you simply don't. And that's the protection piece. But then there's the thing to where sometimes we don't know that we're going to be affected by something. We just don't, but somebody thinks about, you weren't doing protection mechanism, something triggered you, next thing you know, you are affected by it. You know what I mean? You're affected by it. And it's one of the things where, shoot, what do you do now? You're affected. What do you do? And in that case, that's when you clear your energy, because, you know, it's protection that only filters things out. But what happens if it's already there, right? What if you weren't fast enough, or what if it was too overwhelming to where you couldn't protect yourself fully, right? And that's when clearing your energy comes, is when it's already there, you're already feeling it, it's already affecting you. Now it's time to clear it and release it so that it doesn't.
I've always much felt this way intuitively, and I will feel a certain vibration or vibe, and then you can just feel it from other people. Like if you walk in a room, I find it so fascinating that you can not even talk to a person, and or maybe I'm just speaking for me, but but I feel like you can feel, what their energy is. I feel like when you're around lots of people socially, even if you don't know other people in the room, you can kind of feel, and again, maybe this is just my perspective, but I feel like you can feel what's happening between people. And it's just something that seems very concrete and yet not at all. So, what are some of the exercises so like if a person is in that situation where maybe they feel okay and they feel like get a good vibe, and then they are exposed to somebody where it does feel like it's pulling them down or negative. So what can they literally do in that moment to address that?
So a lot of times, when they already are affected by somebody else, then they have to be proactive with clearing. And a lot of times, like, it's easy to know how you clear by looking at what you typically do or crave when you are overwhelmed. Some people, when they're overwhelmed, next thing you know, they're just like, they just want to disconnect. They wanna go to the gym. They want to dance. They want to play with the animals. Some of them want just alone time. They're in the water. They're in nature. Some just want quality time with friends. They want to laugh. They want to feel connected. Some just want to be in the woods or by a fire barefoot. Some want to pick up the guitar and write a song, or want to create some art, or want to build stuff, right? And some are like, hey, when I'm feeling this way, I want to help. I want to volunteer. I want to make a difference. So those things are clues as to activities that are already kind of hardwired in you, to where you have an affinity towards it, you love doing it, that clear your energy as well. So I'm a big believer of, like, rather than trying to force something at the beginning, do things that you already love to do, that you enjoy doing already, that you do typically when you're so stressed, or when you need a break, or when you've overworked, and you just need to kind of like recenter, like figure those activities out, and those become the go-to things when you're in a place where you've absorbed a lot of negative energy from other people.
What if you're in a situation where you can't go do that at that moment? So say you're on like a long car ride with somebody and you want to address the energy in that moment and you're stuck with them.
That's something. So there are going to be some times in some areas like that, to where it's like, and there are practices, I talk about it in the book, to where, like, yes, you can do things to where you can imagine light coming in, and cleansing all the things that you absorb. And then you can do light therapy. You can do breath work, to where you're breathing in for 5, holding for 5, exhaling for 5. And when you're breathing in for 5, you're breathing in light from the sun or from the heavens, that's kind of filling you up with good energy. And then when you exhale for 5, you're breathing out, and imagining breathing out all the dark negative energy as you exhale, right? So there are definitely things to where, if I'm stuck in a situation to where the environment is not as positive, or the person there is debilitating, or they're triggering, then I revert to energy principles like that, whether it's light therapy, breath work, energy healing itself, intention, to where I'm doing that to cleanse the energy in the moment. And that's the beauty of having a lot of tools, is you have things to do, like when you're by yourself in your house, and you have the flexibility and the liberty to do that. Or when you're 40,000 feet up in the plane, you can't do that. What do you do, right? And that's where the principles of the book come in, because, like, when you have a lot of tools, you're never going to run out, regardless of the situation. You're always going to have something to try based on what you're experiencing.
The airplane one is definitely a good example. So you were talking about people doing naturally what feels good to them. So would this extend as well to things people do in the biohacking world? So like sauna and cryotherapy and those types of practices?
I definitely see benefits in that, because here's the thing, is like, everything is connected. Your mind, your emotions, what you do, your intentions, they all produce energy. So even if like, you're doing a cryotherapy, which I do, we have a sauna at home. I do cryotherapy. We're about to buy a cryotherapy machine. I mean, where it's like,
You are? Wait, you're gonna buy like a machine? Are you buying? Oh, sorry, tangent. Are you gonna buy the electric one or nitrogen or?
is that nitrogen one? It's the one you see in like, in biohacking places or chiropractors. You step into this chamber with nitrogen and you're freezing your ass off for 3 minutes.
You're gonna get one in your house?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I, well, here's the thing: is like the way I'm thinking about it is like if I look at people like Tony Robbins is a good friend, like, and I've been doing healings on him and his wife for several years. If I look at him, like, in order for him to serve at a higher and harder level, he treats his body like a Formula One car. And no joke, when he travels, get this, okay? When he travels to do events in different hotels, he has like 3 or 4 semi trucks that follow him. One of them is just for optimization. The next room to him, his cryo machine travels with him.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, and he has an entire.
Does he have a colonic system as well? I think.
They have a lot that like he's got probably 15 or 20 different things that travel with him just for health optimizing while he's on the road, and that's why he can work. He's only sleeping 3 hours a night is because like I mean, you work hard, play hard, but then again, he has an entire team and also biohacking to make sure that he's peak performance, right? So I feel like if you are going to stress your body at the highest levels, then it has to be supported at the highest levels. So whether it's energetically, mental, like actual biohacking things, I mean, they all fit in the lifestyle of if you're serving harder and higher.
One of my friends who tangentially, I think a family member works with Tony, and she told me that he has a colonic machine that he travels with.
When I was in their house, they literally have like the ones that I could count is probably 30 to 40 machines. It's probably and I love it about him. He's just it's probably over. I've heard to guess over $2 to $3 million worth of in that one house. And I know he's got a lot that he puts in different houses, right? But there's a lot, and again, it's like it's the dedication to health, and he wants to just have every single event that he does to be 10 out of 10, 100%. Everybody gets him at his best. So he has high demands for himself. I think his body is high demand as well, as far as it needing to replenish and to heal and stuff.
And then going back to the different tools and modalities that people can do to raise their vibration, I would imagine, and I'm not saying it's placebo effect at all, these things, but I would imagine because of the placebo effect, which I've been studying a lot more, basically, once your brain makes associations between certain things, doing certain things, it really makes it even more powerful, even if it's like really doing something. So I would imagine, do you see this? Like if people make a conscious decision that, I'm going to use this tool or this practice to, either protect myself or raise my energy, that the more they do it, does it become more effective?
I've seen it. It's the crazy thing is I've seen things happen on the intention level. To where when somebody decides I'm going to do this, before they even do it, things start to rearrange. I've seen it happen so many times to where people that, let's say they sign up for I've got these events that I do, then let's say they sign up for my certification program. It's a 2-month program, right? They tell me before they even start the program, things happen. Purging happen, healing happens, and they're like, well, I don't know what's going on. Like, I haven't even started with the content, but why are things happening already? Why are things shifting? Why are things like, healing? And I've seen it happen so many times to where it's not an accident, to where when you consciously intend or make an intention of like, I'm going to change, I'm going to do this, all of a sudden things start working for you before you even take action. Because again, your intention carries a lot of weight in my experience, to where when you set an intention, the universe, God, higher power starts working on it already before you can even do the human work. Because when you set an intention, the request is put forth by your soul. So it's a soul request. Therefore, higher powers that be are already working on the things that you need to work before you can start step one of your mental process.
With that change and that intuition surrounding all of it, how much knowledge is required by the person about where to focus with the healing. And what I mean by that is, so you talk in the book about the different chakras in the body, and maybe you could touch on them briefly, but like what a person need to know that they specifically have a blockage or, an issue they need to address in a specific chakra, or is it pretty intuitive? Like they can just do the things?
Well, it depends. So a lot of the times, yes, I mean, you can be more like, gosh, every time I walk in the room, I feel uncomfortable and I feel in my stomach, then it's your power center. If you're like, gosh, every time, I am around people, I feel heavy in my heart, right? Or every time I'm thinking of opening up, I feel heavy in my heart, then they know it's the heart chakra. Gosh, every time I want to stand up for myself and speak my truth, I can't and have a tickle in my throat, then it's the throat chakra. So some things like that are very obvious to where you can really tell, oh wow, I've got negative self-talk coming up over and over again, then it's the ear chakras, right? So certain things like that, they're more obvious, when you kind of know what each chakra does and what it's related to, then kind of like when things come up that it's more likely than not connected to that. And then the other thing too is, as people get more intuitive and in tune, and it's one of the things that I teach in my certification programs, is like, how do you scan for energy? How can you either know something is blocked or use your energy centers in your hands to kind of feel through and sense if something is blocked in your body or someone else's body, right? So there's different ways of doing it, whether it's like you just know, whether you have to kind of like scan with your hands and kind of find where the heat or the pressure or the kind of like the push is when you're looking for blocks. So there's a lot of ways to do it.
You talk in the book about, I found this so fascinating, the different spiritual gifts that people can have. So first of all, because you have a few that you said are the majority of the ones that you've seen in all of the, the sessions and things that you've done, are there a lot of other like random gifts that only a few people have?
Yeah, I mean, I mean, over time, like I've seen that there are gifts that come up at higher and different levels, right? Because here's the thing: is when I talk about the gifts in the book, I talk about channel, transmuter, healer, psychic, akashic records, weather and technology. When I talk about those things in the book, those are the typical things that I've seen people have in common. Like they're like the baseline gifts, right? And the thing with how gifts work is, you know, there are more advanced gifts, but there's also more advanced versions of the current gifts that you have that are baseline, right? So if somebody can heal, for example, they're a healer, they can heal, can they heal one person? Then it becomes, can they heal a group? Then can they heal thousands of people? Now, can they heal by thinking about somebody? Can they heal by being around when they're around someone's presence? Just their energy itself can heal. Can they heal by looking? Can they heal faster, right? There's like all those different upgrades to the gift, the more that you practice it and the higher your vibration is. So gifts can be like literally like even one gift in itself. That's like people are like, oh gosh, I got this gift that everyone has. Like, it can be very, very deep. And the way that it's applied, the way that it shows up, and it can be different from one person to another, right? So there's that. And then there's, of course, as you master that, and all of a sudden all these other gifts that, you know, wouldn't have showed up start showing up because you've handled the basic one. And that's the thing I learned with gifts is they're not just, ooh, I have them, they're pretty cool, I know what they are, I'm special. Each gift comes with a certain frequency to where once you learn that gift, it changes your life. All of a sudden, you get called to a higher level, your energetic body gets upgraded. You might go through a purge in your life, out with the old and with the new. It's a whole healing process to where people that try to kind of like accumulate them, thinking that are just cool things to know, they don't realize that it comes with a commitment, right? So where I'm telling people, like, hey, when you're learning about a gift, embrace it for 3 to 6 months, because it's gonna take all of you to adjust, to get used to it, to deal with what it takes to handle a gift, yet alone handle more than one in advance, right? So it does require a lot of introspection, working on yourself, maintaining your vibration, and realizing that it's like I look at one gift, it can be like, hey, that's a lesson that you got to learn for a semester or two or more to get really just not even great at it, just to get used to it, right? So I'm very mindful knowing that each gift is not just the gift. It comes with a certain frequency, right? To where if people are not used to or can't handle that frequency, sometimes it's very, it's not of the best and the highest good for me to share things that can cause people to implode if they haven't been prepared for it, if that makes sense.
I think listeners will find it really fascinating. And then if they identify with one of them, they can, read the book and learn more about it. Can we just briefly talk about them? Because so we talked about the hands-on healing aspect. So channelers, what do they do?
So you have channelers, and they're the ones that where energy and information flows through them, right? They flows through them, and they can be talking to a friend, about nothing, and then their friend's soul makes her, it's like almost like channels. They're responding to the needs of the individual in front of them. So if the person in front of them is in pain, needs some help, all of a sudden, information flows through them, and then afterwards, the friend's like, "Wow, that was such amazing information. That was so healing." And they're like, "I don't even know what I said," right? Because it wasn't them. It just flowed through them, and they're so used to doing that, and that they don't question it or they don't think anything of it, right? But for me, that's what channels are typically. Is like they just have information or sometimes energy flowing through them, and they're sharing that with people that they meet. And a lot of times you can't really control it. At times, to where when there's a soul in front of you and you need to channel, you will channel. And if you block it, then you get sick or you get a headache or you get, you overheat, or there's all those different things that you experience. But channelers typically, yeah, information flows through them, and it's best for them to be able to express it, whether they're writing it, they're speaking it, they're painting it, they have to be able to express that information.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I wrote down that you said it's often writers and then people like Einstein and maybe Aristotle. And I like the examples. So how does that compare to a transmitter?
Yeah, so transmuter, what they do is like a filter. Think of them as like they can take heavy, dark energy and make it lighter or neutralize it, right? So they can be, let's say somebody is feeling depressed and they're feeling heavy in their heart, and they're sitting next to somebody who's a transmuter. They don't even have to talk at all, right? Next thing you know, after 20, 30 minutes, the transmuter, most of the time unconsciously, do their thing, and the other person feels lighter, feels happier. They're like, wow, I feel so much great around you. And, all you guys talked about is the French fries and the weather, right? And because underneath it all, the transmuter is absorbing the energy. If you do it right, you're not absorbing it. You're doing it right. You have higher energy doing it for you. You're not drained. But for the most part, that's not what happens. It's like transmitter have big hearts, so they run it through their body. They run the energy through their body, and they get tired, right? They get tired. They get and it affects them, and it can cause issues. And then they learn how to not run it through their body, and they learn how to have a higher vibration and elevate it. And next thing you know, they're transmuting, and they don't even know they're transmuting. It's not affecting them one bit, right? So transmuters, that they kind of like cleanse other people's energies by being around them.
And this is what your son is?
My son does that. Yes, correct.
Going back to the what we were talking about at the beginning, where I think people might sometimes have barriers to this concept. But what about psychics?
Psychic is very broad, because if you think about like psychics, like you have the Hollywood thing of like crystal ball, and you're looking at a crystal ball, and you're predicting someone's future. But psychic comes in different forms. It can be like you dream about, you can be about dreaming about something and it comes true. It could be, your third eye is open enough to where you look at people, you see color around them, or you can talk to or feel or communicate with those of the other side, because, your third eye can access that information. Or it can be, you touch an object and things that happen with the object, past, present, future. I mean, it's like psychic is really broad. Like, it even goes to towards remote viewing, to where people, and they've used this in the government, they classified a lot of these things to where there are people that they have hired and studied and learned from, to where they can tell you exactly what's behind a certain location, or what's going on, and describe things to a T, right? From other planets or from locations that they haven't even seen, and describe everything down to the detail and be accurate. So that's also psychic. So when I'm saying psychic, it's very, very broad as far as like what comes with that name,
It's crazy timing. I actually last night was seeing, it was a show, it was like a magician psychic. With things like that, I wonder, he was absolutely incredible. His name was Peter Antonu. I should know how to say his last name. He's on America's Got Talent. But I'm like, with that type of situation, I'm like, I wonder, is it all like smoke and mirrors?
It depends. It depends. As I know a lot of mentalists, illusionists, psychics, and some of them is sleight of hand, sleight of mouth. It's like literally misdirection to where like they will tell you how they do it, right? To where it is literally they're doing, what's called cold reading, to where they're looking at the body language, you're looking at the feedback, and they're saying truisms that people can be like, okay, that makes sense, right? I've seen that, and I've also seen people like that will literally, and I have people that have gone through my course to where they would come up with coordinates, right? And they would come up with street signs, and they come up and they would describe a location. Next thing you know, 3 days later in the news, they bust a house that was there that was for trafficking, and it was the exact coordinates, the exact streets, and the exact description, right? To where you're like, you can't even make that up. Right, and they do that. They find lost pets, they find lost people, they just find lost things, and they know things that they know things about another person, and they can name things specifically to a T, even if the person was not even there to give feedback at all, right? So I feel like, yes, there are some people who are extremely gifted, and there's some that are like, that, yeah, it is a little bit more of a gimmick of like, yeah, they're called illusion, mentalists, like, magicians, illusionists, to where they really study, misdirection and sleight of hand and all that stuff.
I want to know. It haunts me. And then, okay, so the records one, how do you say it?
Akashic records.
Yes. And so what is that? I had never heard of that before.
So Akashic records is like, it's almost like people that I call them the know-it-alls. Like they have the access to the library of everything and anything. You can ask them about something and they just know it, right? And they're like, how do you know it? They're like, I don't know it. I just know it, right? They just do, right? And they're the ones to where they tap into, like Einstein had this, when he talks about he taps into the collective mind, right? To where a lot of great ideas are born from, but they exist there, and people can tap into it, and they create electricity, they create light, they create the things that we use now that are like, how do you even create that? They tap into a greater collective consciousness that already has all this information, that has this blueprint, and they can access it, right? And with that, it's like it has, again, a lot of different applications as well, because I've had people that had this gift, and they know when earthquakes are about to happen. They know, like, when there's going to be a fire. They know calamities. They know life and death. They can look at somebody and they know if somebody is sick. One of my friends, like, famous celebrity, like, super Akashic, like she even told me, like, before there's an earthquake, in her house, she wakes up 5 seconds before the earthquake happens, tells her husband there's going to be an earthquake. Husband looks at her, all like, what are you talking about? And then earthquake happens, right? To where they just know all this divine information. They've got access to it.
Does that overlap at all with people who affect the weather and electronics? Is that them literally affecting it versus knowing?
They just know it. And then weather and electronics, I mean, yeah, they could be an overlap, but they're like separate in and of itself, right? And I've seen them like literally like I mean, to the extremes, to where I've seen it to where when I'm doing healings on them, and this happened actually recently. We were in California. I was doing a healing on two gals, and one of them, that was her gift, and as I was doing it, it started hailing in California, where it never hails, right? And I've seen it happen so many times to where it's like, doesn't matter where we are, if I'm working on somebody and their gift is weather and electronics, it could be sunny. All of a sudden, it's going to rain out of nowhere as I'm working on them. And when it's done, it's done. And it's happened so many times with people that are like, it's their first time getting healing, or, they've never heard of it. And my team members are just like, yep, we've seen this happen so many times to where there's just no denying that it's just a coincidence. Because if it happens every single time I'm working with somebody that's their gift, right? And because of the emotional release or the healing that occurs in a rapid pace, it affects, whether it's, lights that are flashing, technology is malfunctioning, or the weather all of a sudden does something that's completely different. I've seen it happen so many times where I'm like, okay, it's just part of the process.
And what do those actual sessions look like? Like, it's hard for me to picture So like when you do like a one-on-one session with somebody, is it talking to them? Like, what does it look like?
Well, it's interesting because I actually don't do one-on-ones. It's funny.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So most of the time when I'm doing work, it's like, we got 1,000 people, 3,000, like our biggest event had 15,000 people online, right? So I'm doing mostly group work because that's how I'm able to reach more, right? So when I'm doing one-on-ones, they're very, like it's a friend or, it's a friend or a family friend, or it's a Tony Robbins or presidential family. And the reason why I do one-on-ones, typically there's a trade-off. If they can help or they can reach or they can impact millions of people, then I do one-on-one with them because I'm not working with one person. I'm working with a million. That makes sense because through their energy, they're affecting a million. So for me, it kind of like checks off the whole ripple effect in my mind of like, by working with them, I reach more people. Whether it's like, whether it's in the forefront or the background, that's kind of like how I look at it from an energetic point of view. But if I'm working on one-on-one or as on a group, they're the same. I typically don't ask questions, right? I explain to them what they might experience, and then they're laying down there, and I'm doing my work. It's quiet, like I'm maybe 20 minutes, maybe an hour, but I'm removing energetic blocks, like in energetic body, like I'm activating spiritual gifts. I'm working on their mentally, their emotional, their physical, like whatever is needed, and then afterwards, like they share with me the crazy experience that they've had and what's different, where the pain is gone, or they've gone through this crazy experience, right? And I share with them what I did as well. So it's a very, we're not talking, I don't need context. I don't need a, I mean, some people do, and I'm like, okay, if they do, I'm like, sure. But 95% of the time when I'm doing these one-on-ones, there's not them saying, I want to work on my broken heart, or I want to work on this because I got a divorce. It's like, literally, it's like I try to get as least amount of information as possible and just let the energy do the talking. Because the thing is, people might say, I want to work on this, right? But then energetically, when I'm tapping into energy, the energy of the body doesn't lie. I'll know exactly what they actually need and more, and I work on that. And then I also work on the things that they're wanting to, but I'm working on also what they need that they didn't even know they needed to get worked on, right? So when I do that, like typically that's kind of like how the sessions are. Is like explain to them how it is. I do the work. Afterwards, I share what I did, and they share with me what they've experienced. And for the most part, like the magic of the sessions aren't even though people have had wild experiences during sessions, to where we've had people have had several surgeries, couldn't move their arms past a certain radius, and the next thing you know, after the healing in front of everybody else, they can do 90 degrees, and they're like, I've never been able to do that, right? So I've seen those like one-off, like kind of like, wow, that's crazy things when I'm doing healings. But for the most part, 90 to 95% of the results come in after a week or two. It's like things happen so quick on the energetic level, but when it comes to human time, it's like it's a little slower how it unfolds. It affects your dreams, affects your sleep, affects what shows up, opportunities that show up in your life. People that show up to be further. You're working your boundaries with them, like out with the old and with the new. Like there's a lot of things that happen within a 1 to 2 week period, and only a fraction of it gets realized during the actual session itself. Although people have had crazy sessions of like, oh my gosh, typically a majority of the results happen after.
And the actual role of language in that, and then just in general, what is the role of language? Because some people are all about language and positive affirmations, and
Not needed. Because I've had people that are completely skeptical. They're like, it didn't work. I didn't feel anything. And then they call back 4 days later. It's like, oh my gosh, you're not going to believe it. So for me, it's like the mind doesn't need to believe it. The emotions don't need to be on board in it. You can be completely skeptical. I've had people like literally take my workshops and they're up there in the front taking pages and pages of notes. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, they're really into it. And they come clean to me after the event saying, you know what? I came to this workshop to disprove it. I'm skeptical. Like, this gal worked as a high level executive in PayPal. And she was like the most left brain, scientific, skeptical person you can think of. And they literally came in there with the intention of disproving everything. And at the end, they're like, I tried, but there's just so many synchronicities and so many signs and so many things that have that have come to me and I feel better and this and that, to where I'm like, I don't know how, but it's true. And I'm like, okay. So I've seen it to where the mind fights it, your emotions fight it. It doesn't matter. If your intention is there and you're open-minded and you're at least, showing up, it counts for more than you think.
So say on the flip side, from the people who start out really skeptical, so the people who are all about it and all into it, what is the role? Because you talk about in the book at one point how you can do these sort of like impromptu or short clearings, but then you also say that you limit yourself because you realized at one point that they were becoming a little bit fear-based. So how can we have a healthy relationship with feeling the need to do these things, but not have like a fear-based relationship or feel like we have to do it 24/7?
Well, it depends, because it's definitely a cycle. At the very beginning, I mean, I was all in 3 months, 6 months, doing it every single day. And at the beginning, it doesn't really matter. It's hard to not do it fear-based at the beginning, because if I look at the difference between, let's say somebody's been swimming in negativity all their life and they don't know who they are without it, right? And what gets them to move at the beginning is fear-based. Like, if you think about it, if somebody gets diagnosed with a terminal illness, what gets them to move and do the things that they need to do to fix it is fear-based at times. I don't want to die, right? So a lot of times the fear, there's two ways I look at it. At times I look at it as it gets you to move and it becomes your teacher. And then once you're moving, it stops becoming the fuel that gets you to move, and you start moving from higher fuel, if that makes sense, right? So it's one of the things to where at the beginning, like everybody, at one point in time has been moved by fear. If they stay moved by fear, I think that's where the issue is. But if they're able to, like, okay, I'm in a better place, but now I'm not moved by fear, I'm moved by craving a better life, I'm moved by the love I have with my family, I'm moved by the love I have for myself, then all of a sudden that fear is replaced by love and you're fine, right? So again, I'm not typically, like, it's not very black and white, because the thing is, even fear can elevate and transmute to where it's neutral, right? And then when you learn a lesson from it and you don't rely on it, and you understand sometimes, like, hey, you can't help it. Sometimes, since we live in a humanistic world, like, you might be triggered, you may be angry, you may be hurt, you might be fear, but you don't live there. You acknowledge the pattern, you see it come up, you love yourself through it in spite of what you're going through, right? And then you elevate, right? So I feel like the least amount of time we can stay fueled by fear, the better. If you're in fear, knowing how to dip out of that or to raise above it, the better. But most importantly, not beating ourselves up in the moments where we do get consumed by fear for a second, because when you beat yourself up for feeling fear, it spirals you lower. But when you accept yourself, you love yourself, you realize, okay, I'm feeling fear, I got it, I'll allow myself through it. This too shall pass. It's only human. Next thing you know, granting yourself grace and gentleness in those times that matter is exactly what you need.
Yeah, I think for me personally, that was or has been a big blockage or challenge for me, was not so much the fear, but then once I started getting afraid of the fear, that's like the spiral.
It is a spiral, because at the very beginning, when I was cutting cords and I was doing protections, yeah, was it fear-based? Sure. But the benefit of protecting myself and clearing energy, and next thing you know, 80% of the weight that I was feeling was gone, and I could think and I could feel. Now I'm like, I'm feeling better. And then now, since I'm feeling better, I'm on a higher vibration. Next thing you know, I'm not feeling things as much because I'm on a higher vibration. I'm protected. Therefore, I don't have this need, this fear to keep protecting, because now I'm feeling better. The next thing you know, you're doing it less and less. And next thing you know, you work on yourself a lot to where you're not driven by fear. You're still doing protection, but it's not by fear anymore. It's for a different fuel, love for yourself, or love for your family. You don't want to come across as a bad version of yourself, or a hurtful version of yourself. So you do it out of love of them. So now the fuel changes, but then again, it's kind of, I look at it as like the ripple effect, right? Sometimes it starts with an emotion that you don't really want, but as long as you can elevate it, you can learn from it, you can bounce back from it, right? You don't live there. You can love yourself despite it. You'll be fine, right? Because I'm not really too particular with how it starts, mostly what you do with it.
Speaking to that ripple effect and the future of everything and now and where we are now, do you think the ripple effect of making change for the better positively with raising vibrations and, all of this healing, like, could it ever take over the world, or do you think there'll always be both sides?
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about it, right? I think as individuals, we've just given our power away, and we've forgotten who we are, and we've forgotten what runs within us. If you look at history, whether it's the Jesus or the Buddha or the Dalai Lama or, or whoever, think of anyone who has impacted the world or a huge amount of people in a deep way, right? That is an individual who chose to shine and express their light, at the highest levels. An individual, and they can affect billions, right? Can you imagine what would happen if everybody, 10%, 1% of the world did that, right? Then it's too much light to where we would be in a very different place. I mean, ideally, everybody would do that, but you don't need a lot to do it. You don't need a lot because we're forgetting how potent we are. You know what I mean? You literally are forgetting what we have running within us. And then once we realize and step into that, you'll see people that are powerful that wake up other people just by mere embodiment and potency, right? So I feel like people, at times they don't realize that what we have running within us, and how even if just a few of us, shine our light and embody it at the highest levels, it can change the world as it already has in the past.
How do you think AI will affect all of this?
Well, it depends, because literally the way I look at it is, it could be AI, it could be cigarettes, it could be alcohol, it could be TV, it could be EMF, it could be Wi-Fi, it could be something human made, but I don't live by human law. I answer to divine law, right? It's what I'm powered by. That's what I choose to live my life by, to where it doesn't really I don't really worry about all the humanistic external stuff, because I know that I answer and play by higher and different laws, right? Doesn't mean that I'm not doing my best to understand how they can affect me or slow me down, right? But the way I look at things is, whether it's people are like, hey, social media is bad for you. I'm like, social media is like money. It depends on, what you want to use it for, right? To where social media, I can consume it, or I can use it to spread light. Either way, it's a distribution point. Whereas if I look at AI, sure, AI is AI, right? It can be used to keep people in the dark, or it can be used for a tool to empower and enlighten. I just see them as vehicles, right? So when you start looking at what you think may be dark, and I don't have any control, that maybe I don't even know if the intention behind it may be dark. It doesn't matter what it is, but if it's something that's a tool, then if it can be used for darkness, it can be used for light. The way I look at it, right? So a lot of it is realizing that there's more to one part of the story.
That resonates with me so much. I feel the exact same way about social media, because people often talk about how we're victims of social media, and it's all set up to be this algorithm to just, to destroy you basically. And I'm like, my social media, I mean, I use it to create the content that I love and share about the show. And then my homepage is basically just like Taylor Swift videos.
Yeah, you're like my sister. I've got 4 sisters. We're 5 in the family. So the middle child sister is like a big Taylor Swift fan. I mean, she's one of the only ones I follow on TikTok, and literally I follow 5 people, and my feed is all Taylor Swift, and I'm like, come on, right? But she loves it, and it raises her vibration, and she, it elevates her to where I'm like, go do you, right?
So funny. I love that. But yeah, I really love kind of having an anti-victimhood stance today, just giving people agency to take charge of their lives, and which is really what you're doing with this book. And I can't thank you enough. I think people will learn so much and be so empowered. And I mean, it's really incredible. And thank you again. You invited me to a session that you had in LA, and I so wish I could have gone. So I'm going to have to go to one of these in the future for sure. So for listeners, the book is Spiritual Activator. How can people best follow your work if they want to do some of your programs? What links would you like to put out there?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is I put a lot of my best stuff on social. So Instagram is Spiritual Activator. I'm very active on all socials. And then my book, you can get it at spiritualactivator.com. And when you do that, you're, immediately you're on our email list. And then a lot of our events are invite only. So when you're in the list, you get notified when we have the next one. And then that's typically how we've done it. Yeah, I mean, it's exciting because a lot of the best stuff, the way I look at it is I know my goal is mostly the impact and wrapping the world with that impact. So I know not everyone's going to, very, very few people are going to buy my book or go to my programs. Very, very few. So that's why I go almost like an overdrive on creating and putting my best stuff out there for free, because for me, when I'm doing a video, when I'm writing something, I know that might be my only interaction with somebody, and I only have that amount of time to change their life, right? So that's why I put a lot of my best stuff out there for free to people. Like, people can just browse and they can impact their life positively. So that the best probably place is just my social media. If you watch my videos on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, it will lift it will not only lift your vibration, but it will give you techniques, that you can use to consistently protect your energy, clear your energy, raise your vibration, and step into, a better life.
Well, I love that so much. And I've loved following your social media, and it makes its way. Like I said, there's like all Taylor Swift, but your stuff makes its way into my algorithm. So I really love it and I appreciate it. So actually the last question that I ask every single guest on this show, and it is because I am so appreciative of the importance of mindset in everybody's lives. So what is something that you're grateful for?
Right now, I am grateful for just the amount of momentum and creativity and energy that's flowing in my life, right? Because a lot of times, like even I go through seasons. Everybody goes through seasons. Like you go through a season where you're like, you can create because you've recharged and you can go, and you're just, have enough fuel to not only climb the mountain, but move the mountain, right? And then there's sometimes when you're just like, you're tired, you're resting, you're recuperating, you're rejuvenating, you're being with everything, and you're just like, your body just needs to rest, rejuvenate, heal, right? And I love both, but for me, I'm a bigger fan of the creation, momentum, and the fueled space, and I happen to be there right now, so I'm super excited and grateful for that.
I love that answer. And that really resonates with me too, because I think it's wonderful to understand that we have phases of our lives, because, I think people can get distressed at the idea of being in one phase versus another, but it's really wonderful to be in what you're speaking to. So I'm so happy for you. And I'm so, so grateful for all of the work that you're doing. Can't wait for listeners to check it all out. So thank you so much for your time, Oliver, and all that you're doing. It's really changing the world. So I can't thank you enough.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you.
Have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to the Melanie Avalon Biohacking Podcast. For more information, you can check out my book, What When Wine? Lose Weight and Feel Great with Paleo-Style Meals, Intermittent Fasting, and Wine, as well as my blog, melanieavalon.com. Feel free to contact me at podcast@melanieavalon.com. And always remember, you got this.